And we are continuing with our Chapter 2 lecture series. We are moving on to another one of our organic biomolecules or macromolecules. The topic for this presentation is the lipid. And this one is related to the carbohydrate and that it can also be a source of energy for the cell. So we'll be talking about that. Now, when we talk about lipids, examples of these include fats, oils, and waxes. And the difference between these three types of lipids is what kind of, how they are at room temperature, I guess we should say. So your fats are going to be considered semi-solid at room temperature. So think about soft butter. Your oils are going to be liquids at room temperatures, and your waxes are solid at room temperature. Now, when we are talking about our lipids, there's really not a true monomer or building block here. The basic structure for a lipid is a long hydrocarbon chain, where hydro here is referring to hydrogen atom and carbon atom, of course. And here the ratio would be 1 carbon to 2 hydrogens. Your lipids are considered hydrophobic. These are non-polar molecules, so they do not dissolve in water. So the term hydrophobic, remember, means water-fearing. And they have a lot of functions. Functions include that lipids are an energy source. So we talked about carbohydrates as providing about 60% of the energy for a cell. In the case of lipids, they're providing about 40% of the energy for the cell. We see that lipids are also involved in communication. So a lot of our hormones are actually lipids or lipid-derived hormones. A hormone, remember, is a chemical messenger that's going to be released by one cell into the bloodstream, travels through the bloodstream, and then it's going to, I like to say, talk to a target cell or target tissue. Functions of lipids include structure, and we will see that lipids are important in both structure of the cell, specifically the cell membrane, and of course your body's made up of cells, so that obviously is contributing to the structure of the whole body. But then we also have an important tissue that's dominated by lipids. That's your adipose tissue. This is your fat storage tissue. And it's going to have a lot of structural support to the body as well. Your adipose tissue also provides a lot of protection. So we'll see it padding key organs and structures. So you have, for instance, a lot of adipose tissue around your eyeball, helping to kind of pad that eyeball inside that eye socket. So it's providing shock absorption and padding. And then adipose tissue is going to be found in a layer underneath your skin called the hypodermis or subcutaneous layer. And it's going to have an important role here in insulating the body. So we'll see that lipids are sources of energy, just like carbohydrates. We will see them involved in communication. So we have hormones that are lipid-derived. We'll see them involved in the structure of the cell membrane, also structure of the body, providing protection to key organs, and providing insulation. So we have quite a few jobs here for our lipids. Now, we've mentioned that lipids can be a source of energy, and when we're talking about a source of energy, we are talking about the lipid which is classified as a fatty acid. Now, fatty acids really are those long hydrocarbon chains. So again, they're these long chains of carbon with hydrogen attached, and at the end of that chain, you will have a carboxyl group, which I've drawn in for you here. Now, you've heard before of saturated fats and unsaturated fats. The difference has to do with that fatty acid chain. So a saturated fatty acid is one that is fully saturated with hydrogen, meaning every carbon's outer shell is completed by pairing with other carbons and pairing with hydrogens. So what's not shown here on these carbons, there are hydrogens attached. Your unsaturated fatty acid has double bonds. and the double bond between the carbons will give a little bend in the shape of the molecule, and that bend is significant. Your unsaturated fatty acids are oils, they're liquids at room temperature, while your saturated fatty acids are semi-solids at room temperature, so they are the fats. Now, when your body has extra fatty acids, you will store those as the glycerides. And our glycerides are those molecules that are actually found in that adipose tissue. So we've mentioned that adipose tissue has the job for protection. It's providing shock absorption and padding to key structures. We mentioned it as being our storage form of fatty acids, which are an energy source. So your adipose tissue is going to be important in storing energy. It's providing insulation for the body. And not only does your adipose tissue store fatty acids, but we have some lipid-soluble vitamins and other nutrients that can be stored in these cells as well. Taking a look here, we see that your glyceride molecule is formed by fatty acids pairing with the glycerol molecule. Now, if you're looking from the top down, you see that following the direction of the arrow, you have a dehydration synthesis reaction to create your glyceride. What's pictured here is a triglyceride, so that means 3 fatty acids paired to 1 glycerol molecule. If you're eating triglycerides, then your cells will be breaking that down into fatty acids and a glycerol, and of course that is called hydrolysis. So if you're eating triglycerides, you're going to hydrolyze it into your fatty acids and your glycerol. If you have extra fatty acids, you're going to make glyceride or make triglyceride through a dehydration synthesis reaction. We've mentioned too that you have lipids involved in communication. There are 2 categories here. We have a category of lipids called eicosanoids, which are very localized. They're actually called local hormones. A key example of an eicosanoid is a prostaglandin. Prostaglandins are released by cells that have been damaged, so this is important in that pain signal. So if you have damaged tissue, you need to know about that so that you can take care of that issue. Another example of our communicating lipid would be just those hormones. And the difference here is that the hormone is going to flow through the bloodstream, whereas the eicosanoid is just released like a cell-to-cell communication. Examples of lipid hormones are steroids, and these include your sex hormones such as testosterone and estrogen, but then also cholesterol. And we will see that not only is cholesterol an important steroid, a communicating hormone, but it's also important in the structure of your cell membrane. The cell membrane we've mentioned is formed from lipids, specifically the molecule phospholipid. And this one should jump out to you because we will spend a whole conversation just on phospholipids when we get into the discussion of the cell membrane. We also have glycolipids and cholesterol as part of the cell membrane structure, so we'll see those again in the future. With our phospholipids, we see that they are actually responsible for the formation of the semi-permeable cell membrane. So kind of the bulk of the cell membrane is formed from phospholipids. Now the phospholipid is an important molecule because it's got this hydrophilic head. So this is a phosphate head that is water loving. So it's going to orient toward the fluid that's inside the cell and the fluid that's outside of the body. So you actually will see the cell membrane is 2 layers of phospholipids. And then we have a hydrophobic tail. So we have a portion of this molecule that's water loving and a portion of the molecule that's water fearing. And so that will be very important as we investigate the cell membrane structure in the near future. Cholesterol is going to be critical in the stabilization of the cell membrane. So we'll see that again, so make sure you look for that one.